So yeah, the title is a little bit over the top, and so's the thumbnail, but it's absolutely getting at a point, which is that Joker 2 is probably the worst comic book movie of all time. At least according to the scores, the fans, the toxic people that actually pay the bills for the studios and anybody else that's involved in these productions. In fact, what I think is funny is that a lot of these entities, these trade papers, seem to be surprised by what's occurring. Not us. We knew this was coming. We were talking about the fact that Joker was going to be a flop. So let's take a look at the stories. Collider. Joker Folie earns the worst cinema score of all time for a comic book movie. Now, get used to this headline because it's consistent. There's a lot that you can definitely walk away from with this film, and I'm going to tell you that the Francis Ford Coppola's take on this is telling because he has some support for Todd Phillips for some reason, but why would we be surprised? Megaflopolis was an absolute disaster, and it's really knocked my esteem or my regard that I held for Francis Ford Coppola. But from the story itself, it says that by comparison, the first Joker film earned a solid B plus cinema score, and more surprisingly, won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. Like its predecessor, Joker Folie Deux also debuted at Venice, but had a significantly more muted response, which should have been telling. And it also sounds like the Venice Film Festival may be more reliable than any other film festival out there, because consider just how much regard it had for Megaflopolis and this film, which was very little. But it gets far worse when you consider that Joker 2 is also being counted out by the main trades, the ones that usually slurp the butt of Hollywood, like Variety, who says Joker earns D cinema score, lowest ever for comic book movie. A little less verbose, but no more inaccurate. In fact, this is very telling, especially when you consider that the previous record holder was 2015's Fantastic Four, which was awful. Fan Four Stick was terrible movie that received a C minus cinema score, and yet here we are. But look, overall, this isn't surprising. All you had to do was look at the reviews, even the early ones that hinted that there was going to be a problem. In fact, Folie Deux hasn't received as many positive reviews as the first film. No, not by a long shot. And when you start to see that the critics and the audience align with very low numbers, that should tell you something. And it absolutely does. Worse yet is the financial reporting around this movie. Folie Deux, which opened in theaters on Friday, added everything up, including its preview number and its fan screenings on Monday, to get to a $20 million opening day. Boy, was that a lie. Headed into the weekend, the film was expected to make $50 million, which I said was going to be difficult. In fact, you could go back and check it out in one of the videos I did right up here. I said 50, 55 tops. I don't think it was going to get anywhere near some of the numbers that were being projected earlier on, and it looks like it only made 40. Something that's actually funny about all of this is that Joker 2 box office is bombing worse than the Marvels. It's competing with Madam Web, and it looks like Morbius may do far better than this film overall, which is surprising. Consider the budgets for the other films that we've mentioned, Madam Web and Morbius. They're far below the $200 million threshold that was thrown into this Joker 2 disaster. And as Matt McGloin points out in his article on comicbook.news, you can see that the Marvels massively bombed with a $200 million gross, which only saw a few handful of fanboys and people like myself, reviewers, to actually see it. Oh, and for those out there that thought Lady Gaga was a draw, no, fangirls aren't showing up either. What's funny, though, is that the shills are out in force, including Molly Edwards over at Total Film. Why? Well, apparently Joker Folie Deux makes it clear that Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn is only just getting started, and I really need more. Look, I know this is an opinion piece, but a Gaga solo movie? No, her character wasn't very intriguing at all. And clearly, the combination of an Oscar winner and a musical artist didn't make for cinematic fodder that anybody thought was worth seeing. Even the New York Post was coming at this film pretty hard. On October 5th, their headline was Joker sequel gets the last laugh as critical flop takes box office crown. This story is terrifying because it's pointing out and illustrating the fact that the performance at the box office on the last two weekends has been dismal, with terrible products coming to the screen and nobody willing to watch them. We could be looking at another consecutive weekend of an overall domestic box office below $100 million. If you're an exhibitor, this is a disaster. And if you're Warner Brothers, this is some of the worst news you could have possibly gotten. Nobody is interested in your film, and there are a lot of reasons why. There's also something that is terribly disturbing to me. The fact that Francis Ford Coppola was praising Todd Phillips in advance of this film, saying he's always one step ahead of the audience. This guy apparently has lost the plot, and he's lost his sense of what the audience wants because Megaflopolis performed so poorly just prior to the release of Joker 2. This is a guy that I held in high regard, and yet I now am challenged to find anything that he says that I can support. In a sense, The Hollywood Reporter, which is also a Penske Media property, is getting a twofer on this one. That's right. D plus awarded to Megalopolis and a D earned by Joker 2. This gives the media the opportunity to take down two powerful people in Hollywood at the same time and to take a little shine off their patina. What I also find funny is Hollywood Reporter was able to talk about what this film looked like 3 weeks ago with a $70 million opening. And I quote here, it was a respectable number. However, as reviews started coming in and the film was screened for influences, I guess influencers is what they meant, interest waned, and there was a notable dip in tracking. Well, yeah, and when we got to the Monday fan screenings and word of mouth started to flow, things got even worse. But I think we've arrived at the culprit, the reason that things are going so poorly for so many of these studios, and why they're coming out and blaming you for these failures. It's the fact that they don't care what you think. They aren't listening to you. So much so that according to Screen Rant, Folie declined test screenings despite Warner Brothers' $200 million gamble. Well, no wonder it failed. You didn't even look to the audience to see if this was going to be considered good. And what's funny is it was Warner Brothers who decided not to ask the fans what they thought, thinking that the film festival circuit would be able to give them enough info. The problem is you're inside a bubble in that situation. So how could you possibly expect that this would, reflect the mainstream audience and the flyover country that you disdain so much? Not to mention the fact that it never occurred to them that a complete tonal shift was going to abandon the audience. It would alienate them. Nobody wanted to see the risky musical element in dry courtroom sequences. You should have at least tested to see if any of those seemed compelling. And what's even more revealing is the fact that this is the studio's most expensive effort of the year. Of course, we now know why Hollywood fears you and why you are so willing to give them the D. Cinema score, that is. Poor word of mouth is actually translating into failures at the box office. That makes sense. When people like Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, Jeremy Johns, and even myself say something negative about a film and are able to back it up with other information, you get a whole audience that goes, maybe I don't want to see that. And why I don't have millions of viewers, I have the lovely people out there like you right now, you're more than willing to spread the word and share the video and like and subscribe to a channel that maybe it's your first time coming to, which I absolutely appreciate. And if you didn't see how slyly I did that, well, share the video around. When you've only got 7 million from your Thursday previews, a number that probably includes the Monday fan screenings, you've got some serious problems. This film will not recover on this bad word of mouth. And the fact that the mainstream trade magazines have turned this into a participation sport, this thing is in big, big trouble. And finally, I want to look at one last thing, and it's this comparison that I just threw up here. These are the films that I would say were comparable in quality, if not in budget. Joker Folie Deux, $200 million. Madam Web, $80 million. Challengers, $55 million. And Morbius, 2 years ago, $75 million. At current, Morbius is sitting at $162 million globally, which is not a good number and should be easy to beat. But at $121 million in worldwide global box office, Folie Deux will have to avoid a catastrophic fall-off in total box office participation. An 85% collapse will absolutely make this film fall to a threshold where it may have difficulty getting to $162 million in the second week, let alone the third. U.S. box office is comparable if you look at the opening weekends between those two films. When you look at the embarrassing performance of something like Madam Web or the disappointing performance of, let's say, Challengers, you've got your work cut out for you, which is embarrassing. And while it's likely that Joker 2 will surpass Morbius, it certainly isn't going to catch up or equal The Marvels, which still finished under $200 million. This is absolutely disastrous for Warner Brothers. It's going to be a stain on Todd Phillips's career, and I think it might remove Joaquin Phoenix's name from the preferred actors list in Hollywood after 2 consecutive box office disasters. And ultimately, this may spell the end of Lady Gaga's fantasy of moving into mainstream cinema, because I don't think it'll happen. Regardless, I think my prediction is still in play. I think this film will make less than $400 million globally. I think it'll do it rather easily. And I think that if Hollywood learns anything, it's that they need to stop hating their audience. And now you've had my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know your comments down below. Let me know what you think this film will do. Let me know if you are going to see this film, or let me know if you've seen it already. I'm curious because I don't think many people have, and I don't think many people will. And hopefully, if you watched my review, you avoided it completely. On that note, as I mentioned before, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, please do so. It's free, and we're trying to grow to 50K. I would really appreciate that, and I thank you. Share the video out there. Make sure people on Meta see it. Make sure people on Insta, Facebook, Gram, and all those other places see it. And you know what? Share it on your own Twitter, because you know I am. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.